Hey everyone, DJ Short from Rotoworld here, back for our weekly fantasy baseball Q&A. Usually we would do it at 1 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be noon Eastern moving forward every Tuesday, so just keep that in mind. Here for the next half hour or so, now happy to take all your fantasy questions, whatever you have on your mind. I'm home right now, as you can see. I have an exterminator coming today. Um, and you know how they give you those long windows where they're like, 10 to 4 or whatever, uh, kind of like the cable guy type of thing. That's what I got today. So I am hoping in the next 30 minutes this person does not arrive. If they do, this could be a very interesting Q&A. We'll see what happens. But I'll try to get to as many questions as I can from you guys. Once again, thanks so much for joining me here. Um, so yeah, we could talk fantasy, waiver wire pickups, maybe slow starters, buy lows, whatever you have on your mind. Happy to answer. Giving some folks a little bit of time to hop into the chat here, and we'll get into some questions. Obviously, Aaron Judge is a lot of conversation about Aaron Judge, and it would be usually because he is the defending American League most valuable player. But 2 home runs last night against the Blue Jays, where his eyes were kind of, taking a peek somewhere. We assume the Yankees dugout. Been some conversation, and that maybe there were some signs being relayed about the next pitch coming. Wouldn't be the first time something like that would happen if a pitcher was tipping his pitches, and Aaron Judge can hit a home run off anyone. And there was a fringy major leaguer, pitching as well, so that certainly helped Judge's case. Probably much ado about nothing there, but it will be a topic of conversation for the next few days. But expect that to blow over soon. Not really a big deal, but something to keep people talking for sure. So we can start out here in a second, I think. Let's go to this first question. So Dave with a question, Anthony Volpe or Matt McLean, the rookie with the Reds. I think I will go with Volpe here, just because he has that experience under his belt so far. Granted, there's been some ups and downs with Volpe for sure. I think him dropping in the lineup is probably a good thing for him to take the pressure off. There's going to be ups and downs. I think he's done a respectable job at shortstop. Um, and the speed is there. We've seen a little bit of power as well. I think he's just a bit more reliable. McLean has earned his promotion to the big leagues for sure. His numbers in AAA have been great. Pop and speed, good ballpark, all that stuff. So he should probably be a speculative ad in mixed fantasy leagues, but I would put Volpe just a tad bit higher. McLean hit second in his first game, which is pretty cool to see. We'll see if that will continue, but uh, McLean's certainly relevant. I would put Volpe a tier ahead of him for now. Take another question here from Dave. Would you drop Gunnar Henderson to stash Encarnacion Strand, another prospect with the Reds? I probably wouldn't. If Henderson continues to struggle, yeah, there's a chance he could be demoted altogether. But yeah, I mean, you're just assuming Encarnacion Strand will come up and be a beast, and there's just no way of knowing whether that's true. And Henderson is evidence of that. Came up last year and impressed, but this year has been a slow start. I don't think you can bank on Encarnacion Strand coming up and being a stud. So um, yeah, I'd show a little bit more patience as far as that's concerned. With the non-existent K rate, is there any reason to gamble early on the return of Cole Irvin, or is he purely a wait and see? So yes, Cole Irvin returned to the Orioles today. Of course, was acquired from the A's during the offseason. Was really one of the only ads the Orioles made during the winter, and he really struggled over his first 3 starts. It was kind of surprising to see the demotion that early after just 3 starts, but he's done what he's needed to do to come back to the majors. I think he's only walked like 3 or 4 batters over his, I think, 5 starts in AAA. So the elite control that we saw last year with the A's was back. Not really a guy who misses bats, like we know, and that can be a dangerous thing at times. Certainly, the home ballpark is on his side. It doesn't look like Irvin will slot right back into the rotation, though. With the way Grayson Rodriguez has struggled, I know he had a good start against the Rays about semi recently, but the start last night was not great. Has had a couple of rocky outings recently. The ERA is inflated. I don't think the Orioles are going to demote Rodriguez anytime soon necessarily, but if the struggles continue, I wouldn't rule out that possibility. And yet, injuries can open up things in a rotation as well. I think Cole Irvin will get another shot, but generally he's a fringy mixed league starter anyway, probably more of a matchup play. And given that he doesn't have a rotation spot, um, I don't really think he's worth an ad at this point in time, at least in most standard mixed leagues. Uh, do you think Taj Bradley is up soon with recent injuries, and how do you think he will perform the rest of season? Certainly, he will get another chance here soon. I know the numbers in AAA haven't been amazing as he started making this adjustment to pitching every fifth day. I think he's starting tonight, maybe. Um, 'Cause, yeah, his last start was 5 days ago, so it should be soon. But I mean, since the demotion to AAA, Taj Bradley has allowed 16 runs with 6 walks, 4 homers allowed in 9 innings over 3 starts. So not so great. You want to see better results for sure. Is he worth a stash? Should you keep him on your bench in a Knicks league? Probably so. I would try to make room for him if I can. But the results recently have not been great. Worse than I thought they were, actually. Dylan with a question. Hi, DJ. Do you see Kirby and Joe Ryan having a chance to win the Cy Young Award this season? I mean, they're in the mix for sure, but would I put them at the front? Probably not if I had to guess right now. Let's see the favorites. Sorry for the dead air. Cy Young odds at the moment. Let's see. So Garrett Cole, the favorite, no surprise there. Shane McClanahan, Shohei Ohtani, Luis Castillo, Kevin Gosman. There's Joe Ryan, George Kirby a bit further down, Sonny Gray, Framber Valdez, all up to great starts. Yeah, I think looking at this list, Joe Ryan's not a bad one. Luis Castillo was my pick coming into the year, at least as far as like someone to sprinkle on and not going full chalk. So I still like that one based off of his early start to the season. I think Kevin Gosman is a good play as well. Shohei maybe not so much with the way he's pitched recently. But yeah, and then you go down the list: Eduardo Rodriguez, Nathan Eovaldi, Shane Bieber, Jacob DeGrom, Logan Gilbert, guys like that. But yeah, Cole, McClanahan, Ohtani, Castillo, Gosman, then Ryan. Those are the favorites right now in the American League. Michael, I currently have 4 shortstops on the roster. I need to move one for an outfielder. Who should I keep? Anderson, Edman, Seager, Rosario. I think you have the right order here. I'd prefer to keep the top 3. Rosario gotten off to a slow start this year. That's nothing new. I just think that all of these other options here, Seager, who should be back very soon with the Rangers, he's the top of the list there. Edman, speed wise, you can't beat that. Multi-position eligibility. Anderson, I mean, I think it's all about health for Anderson over the past couple of seasons. There's been some nagging issues there. I think the White Sox have to be better than they have been. I just think Anderson is more likely to stand out in a category than Rosario will. So I'd have to go with Anderson over Rosario. They're probably the closest as far as that is concerned. Before we move on here, just a quick reminder, download the Rotoworld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in your app store today. Make sure to get that Rotoworld app. Very, very helpful over the course of a season. By the way, last night we saw another rough outing from Alek Manoah. Now has a 5.40 ERA, and I tweeted out this morning like this isn't something where he is unlucky. Like he's actually his ERA is lower than some of the more advanced metrics. So 5.40 ERA, has a 6.13 xFIP, has a 6.30 xERA, has a 6.46 FIP. Pretty rough as far that's pretty brutal for Alek Manoah. I didn't get any coverage of Manoah on my fantasy rosters this season. I just looking at the advanced data from last year, it looked like he had a little more good fortune than he might have deserved, I guess is the best way to put it, for lack of a better term. Also, the strikeout rate didn't stand out relative to some of the other fantasy aces. I avoided Dylan Cease this season for similar concerns, which isn't to say that I nail everything. I mean, I was all in on Hayden Wesneski coming into draft season. He was demoted after getting off to a rough start this season. I was not paying the freight on Spencer Strider this year, so you win some, you lose some. That's kind of the way it goes in fantasy leagues sometimes. So I can't do a victory lap on that if I'm, missing stuff in other areas. William, up next with a question. I was offered Andres Jimenez and Jared Kelnick for Yu Darvish. I have Sonny Gray, Erie Perez, Zach Gallen, Marcus Stroman, Kirby, Manoah, Steele. I think you could probably do that deal. I don't know the extent of the rest of your roster as far as outfielders, middle infielders, that kind of stuff. But I do think you have the depth to pull this off. I would not be counting on Manoah. I mean, Manoah can't be worse than he has been, that's for sure. But I think you at least have some solid depth there in terms of Gallen, who I think is a stud. He was my preseason pick for the NL Cy Young Award. I did get that one right, at least so far. I mean, we'll see how things go, but he's looking like the favorite to me right now. Sonny Gray's having a great year. Kirby, we just mentioned. Justin Steele has been great dating back to the second half last year. Stroman, I don't think he's as good as his numbers necessarily indicate, but solid enough for a back end mixed league starter. Erie Perez has all that ceiling. So I've been encouraged by Kelnick. Needs to make some more adjustments for sure. And looks like the league's adjusting to him again. And Jimenez, I was expecting a little bit of regression this year, but it does seem like maybe he's coming around recently. Still has the excellent speed in his favor as well. So that's a big plus. How do you feel about the following streamers? Start them all. How would you rank if you could choose only one or two? Tyler Wells versus the Angels. John Gray against Colorado. Andrew Heaney against Colorado. Let me quickly take a look here. Wells is a definite for me. I would start Wells. And I think that is tomorrow, if I'm remembering this right. I set the daily starters for our season tools content, which is free now. You can definitely go check it out. So I would probably start most of those guys, although let me just take a quick look at schedules here before I give you like a no-brainer type of thing here. So yeah, I mean, given that these starts later this week, Gray, Heaney, as you mentioned, in Texas, so I just want to make sure those weren't in Colorado. But yeah, I think I start, especially the road Rockies. Like that's a no-brainer one to me. So I'm into that. And Wells has been good enough. That doesn't scare me too much. Dylan, up next, thoughts on Casey Schmidt and his hot start. I think he's deserving of the playing time there with the Giants, and it helps that he can play multiple positions. Very good third baseman, but getting some time at shortstop. Brandon Crawford hurt, and at his age and kind of the trajectory of his career, Schmidt's the future here. I think defensively, that's going to keep him on the field because he's so good. Whether we're going to see like the early power continue from Schmidt, I'm not quite so sure about that one. But I do think he has a future of being a valuable player. I need to see a bit more before I really believe as far as standard mixed leagues. But it is one of those things where in some cases you ride the hot hand and see how it plays out. And I think that's the case with Schmidt. But he's really jumped on the radar over the past year, had a great spring training, and deserves a shot here with the Giants. So I'm excited to see how things go with him. In a game where the consensus was Erie Perez looked great, he had a 7.74x ERA. What would you attribute this to? I mean, I'll have to look a bit deeper into it, but I'm assuming that he gave up a lot of hard contact. I believe. Now let's see. So the average exit velocity against Erie Perez in that game was 92.8 miles per hour. Context, not great. Hard hit percentage, 54.5. Again, that's high. Barrel percentage, 18.2. So 2 barrels out of 11 batted balls. That's why you get that number. I'm not as much concerned about like these kind of numbers in a small sample. What was it, 4 2/3 innings? I mean, the stuff was straight up nasty, and that's what you're banking on at this point in time. It is really hard to rely on a rookie pitcher for consistent fantasy production, even with like the sick pitching gifts that we see all the time, which are great. I enjoy them very much, but expecting a rookie pitcher to come up and be consistent and awesome all the time, it's just not going to happen. But I wouldn't look too much into a small sample size. Erie Perez is very, very exciting, very fun. And I think the bench, I talked about this on Circling the Bases, the podcast I do with Scott Pianowski, Mondays and Wednesdays. Download it wherever you get your podcast. We talked about Erie Perez yesterday and just kind of what we saw as far as weekend fab. Like if you have a budget of 1,000, like the baseline is set with any top prospect pitcher who comes up. It's like $300 is the going rate right now, 30% of your season budget. So we'll see when Gavin Williams comes up, like how much he's going to go for. Probably going to be 300. So it's strange because you really can't count on that instant impact. But with so many injuries with pitchers, you can understand why that's sort of going rate at this point in time. Michael, not sure if I should do either, but which is the better offer for Salvador Perez, Estuary Ruiz, and Tyler Stevenson, or Seiya Suzuki and Cal Raleigh? Great question. I don't know if this offer came in today off the, on the heels of Cal Raleigh hitting 2 home runs, homering from both sides of the plate against the Red Sox. I think, I really like Suzuki as well. So I could see doing either of these trades depending on your areas of need. Like if you're really lacking in speed, I could see Ruiz. I really like Stevenson too. So I don't think either are bad. I think it just depends on what your needs are. Like, do you really need an outfielder? It looks like maybe you do. And I think Stevenson, I'd put a tier higher than Raleigh just because I expect him to hit for average. I love the ballpark, all that stuff. But again, without the full context, it's hard for me to know for sure. But I think they're fair offers for sure. Before we continue here, just a quick reminder. This weekend, we have a good one on MLB Sunday leadoff on Peacock. You can watch live games exclusively all season long on Peacock this week. Check out the Yankees take on the Reds in Cincinnati. You can catch the action live this Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Should be a fun game. The Reds are pesky. The Yankees, I know, not quite living up to expectations so far this season. They've had a lot of injuries, but Aaron Judge has been on a tear of late. So look forward to seeing that game. I will be in the post-game show giving my betting picks for the day. I usually give 1 for the actual Peacock game itself and then 2 for the late slate of afternoon games. So looking forward to making some picks this weekend and being a part of the show there. Excuse me. I have about 10 more minutes here before I gotta run, and I've not seen the exterminator come to my house yet, so I'm very knocking on all sorts of wood, hoping that doesn't happen in the next 10 minutes. So Captain Vic with the question: what are your thoughts on Elly De La Cruz? When will he come up and make a fantasy impact? I mean, it's going to happen this year at some point, you would think, right? Matt McLean coming up is, he will have a role regardless of when Ellie De La Cruz comes up. I would think here. I mean, the Reds are really blessed with some really exciting infield prospects. I mean, we mentioned Encarnacion Strand, who he needs an opportunity too. So it's I think this Reds team they're gonna arrive and be here sooner and be legit sooner than a lot of people think. And Ellie De La Cruz is probably the best of them all with what he could do on the field. Uh, like almost O'Neal Cruz, but better. You know what I mean? Like that has that kind of just exciting upside where I feel like every day he's going to break Statcast in some way. Like he's that kind of player, but maybe better. So it's pretty exciting. And would I stash him right now? I think it depends on the depth of the league. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's going to be a pretty exciting day when he makes it up. Patrick with the question: Santander, Yelich, or Ward? Yeah, I think they all live in that same area as far as fantasy outfielders. I think going into the season, they were all drafted in the same kind of window. I think Yelich has the greater power upside, or Santander has the more of the power upside, which you might want. Yelich more of the table setter at this point in his career on base skills, but not necessarily the power. Taylor Ward at his best, hitting leadoff for the Angels, accruing runs scored, all that kind of stuff. Not quite as good as he was last year, but has been good enough across the board. I think I like Santander if I had to, give a snap judgment here. But they're all right there. Up next, do our Mets keep Epler around in hopes of he brings Ohtani to Citi Field next year? Good question. Hard to speculate on that so far. We're only a quarter of the way into the season, but no doubt the Mets have been disappointing. Justin Verlander makes his Citi Field debut tonight against the Rays. That's a tough series for the Mets, no doubt about that, especially when they haven't been able to fatten up on some of the worst teams in baseball, and now you have some really good ones coming through on the schedule here. So this is a critical stretch for the Mets. The Mets have not hit a home run, I think 50 innings, which is just unfathomable. They didn't add really any offense during the offseason, and that's showing so far. But really, everything's gone wrong. This rotation is not great. David Peterson has been a massive disappointment. Quintana's hurt. Carrasco might I think he'll be back later this week. And of course, Verlander was out for a while. Scherzer too. So they really need to stabilize that rotation and Scherzer to be himself or something close to it. And that should really help here. I think the lineup is better than what it's shown. Beatty and Alvarez getting more experience should help too. Much too soon to speculate about Epler's future, but I think there's only a handful of teams who could give Ohtani what he will likely command this offseason, and the Mets are there. The Mets spend money more than anyone else, and yeah, I think the Mets will be in the mix. Dodgers, Yankees, it's going to be the usual teams you would expect. So we will see what happens. Oh, fun. Mark Tompkin is saying Mets are likely facing Taj Bradley. Okay. So yeah, that's like I said, the results for Bradley recently have not been great in AAA, but he's a no-brainer add wherever he's available right now. So Fab, yeah, the bids are going to be high, assuming he's a free agent right now. The bids should be high. That's a nice matchup for him to come back to against a Mets team who just can't get out of their own way right now. So yeah, no brainer. Up next, Dave, is Matt Strom in the setup mix? I want to put him in my SP spot since my league counts saves and holds. So it does look like Strom is in that setup mix. He's so great in the rotation, but in those shorter bursts in the late innings, I think he can be very, very good. Jose Alvarado should be back fairly soon, moving back into that closer role. The late innings for the Phillies they have a lot of options, and I still think the hierarchy is kind of sorting itself out. But I think Strom, based off of how he pitched to begin the year, he's looked really good. I think he can definitely find his way into that setup mix to be the bridge to the ninth inning. William, thanks for answering my questions. With Starling Marte currently on a 5-game hitting streak and a 2-game multi-hit streak, are these signs for things to come? So I actually mentioned Starling Marte in our buy low targets episode of Circling the Bases yesterday. Go check it out. We didn't try to force the issue. Like we named 3 or 4 players each. And Marte was one of mine. And I think it goes back to this neck strain that Marte had. I believe it was April 11th or something like that. And I think that provided some context for the struggles that Marte has had. He's been hitting the ball hard even when he's been making outs recently, so that's been very encouraging. And not striking out more than he usually has. Got off to a bit of a slow start last year too. I'm not super alarmed with what we've seen from Marte so far. I think he's going to be fine. He's also stealing bases. I think he has 11 stolen bases already, which is a really encouraging number for a player who didn't run as much last season, was banged up. The sprint speed is a little bit low so far this year, but we'll see over a larger sample if that starts to even out. But I think Marte will be fine. He's moved to the 6th spot in the lineup due to his early struggles, but assuming he moves back up to the number 2 spot eventually, I think there's going to be a lot of good stuff to come for him. Kimbrel or King in a rest of the season in a saves holds league? I would take King. I think there's a chance for him to become the closer for the Yankees. Kimbrel, I think he's on the back 9, certainly. I think he's potentially just a headache to have on a roster, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he's not pitching the 8th or 9th at some point this year. King is more of the name on the rise, and I'd rather bank on those skills, the recent results, as opposed to the name brand and the history. King is my choice for sure. How about closers? I think you mean Dylan Floro or Clay Holmes. I'd take Clay Holmes. I know I just mentioned King, but yeah, Floro should get a chance here with AJ Puck is out with dead arm, but the Marlins also have multiple options here. I got Brazoban from the Marlins bullpen in a couple of leagues over the weekend. Again, just a speculative ad here, depending on how things shake out. I would take Holmes like rest of season. In the short term, I don't think Floro is a bad pickup at all. So pretty good on that. I think that's a good call. It's tough right now, but over the course of the season, I would take Clay Holmes. Ranger Suarez in an NL only league rest of season. Yeah, he should be rostered everywhere. That's for sure. I think we've already probably seen the best of him as far as mixed league production, but I think he can be very respectable. And in an NL only league, especially, he's probably in like a number 3 starter on an NL only staff. So can he post an ERA in the high 3s? I think that's probably what we're looking at. That's where I would set my baseline expectations. But again, in an NL only league, that's just fine. You want innings and possibility for wins, and that's what you'll get there with that Phillies lineup now with Bryce Harper back. Would you drop Jose Abreu for Matt McLean? I'd explore it potentially here. It all depends on what your options are for corner infielder, first base. Jose Abreu, I was optimistic on him coming into the season because the hard hit numbers and quality of contact were still very good, even coming off a year where the power wasn't necessarily there with the White Sox. But let's look at Jose Abreu's numbers to date here. So barrel percentage, 18th percentile, hard hit percentage, 29th percentile, average exit velocity, 21st percentile, expected batting average, 235, expected slugging, 339, striking out more, 36 years old. Like, I think all these trends here are not great. So if you want to take a chance on McLean, and let's assume you have a corner infielder option who is promising, I like it. I would be into it. Do you think the Mets will join the Rays, Mariners, and Cardinals in the trade deadline bidding war for Eduardo Rodriguez? Do you think they'll spend their time trying to pry Shohei early? I don't think the Angels are going to trade Shohei Ohtani unless they fall way out of it this year. I just do not see it happening. As for Eduardo Rodriguez, yeah, there's no reason the Mets shouldn't be in that mix for him. Rodriguez has an opt-out after this season, I believe. So if he continues to pitch well, he's going to hit free agency, and the Tigers will know that. Any team that's bidding for Rodriguez will know that. So I don't think the cost would be prohibitive there. So yeah, I think the Mets would certainly explore that, and they need all the depth they can get in this rotation. Even with Quintana coming back, Carrasco, etc. This is still the oldest rotation in the majors. Kodai Senga, uh, does he hit a wall at some point? And the control has been not great anyway, but innings wise, workload, first full season in the majors, like does he hit a wall at some point? I think it's a real possibility. So I would expect the Mets to be in the mix there. Baron with a question: with Fairbanks back, likely Adam returns to setup role. I would think Adam will just go back to the setup role. I I mean, it's nice that Fairbanks is back. I was a little concerned with some of the terminology used when Fairbanks went down. But yeah, Adams is so good in what he does that I still think he'll get save chances here and there, but Fairbanks more likely to be the main guy there. Unfortunately, I do have to take off here. It's been about 30 minutes. Good hang with you guys. If I didn't get to your question, please track me down on Twitter at DJ Short. You can find me there. Again, circling the bases Monday, Wednesday. So tomorrow's our waiver wire Wednesday show. Should be some good stuff from myself and Scott Pianowski. We'll look shallow leagues, deeper leagues, anything that can help you guys out. Looking forward to that show. And I will see you guys next Tuesday. Remember, noon Eastern time. We're an hour earlier than we've been in previous weeks. So see you then. Good luck this week, and see you next.